Hello, and welcome to Stories Hub. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. On this channel, we bring you love affairs. Today, we have an exciting topic to discuss, so stay with us till the end. Let's dive in. Emma sat in the dimly lit living room, her fingers gripping her phone as she reread Mark's last message. "You deserve better. Leave him." The words echoed in her mind, filling the empty space where love for her husband used to be. She glanced toward the bedroom, where Daniel lay asleep, his breathing steady, his presence familiar yet distant. Her heart raced. She had rehearsed this moment over and over in her mind. The conversations with Mark had painted a future full of passion, excitement, everything she believed was missing. The idea of divorce no longer felt like a threat. It felt like freedom. Taking a deep breath, she stood, her bare feet sinking into the soft carpet as she walked toward Daniel. He stirred slightly when she called his name. His eyes fluttered open, groggy but attentive. "I want a divorce," she said, voice firm but quiet. Daniel blinked. He didn't sit up. He didn't ask why. He simply stared at her as if searching for something, perhaps the woman he married, the woman he once knew. "Okay," he said, after what felt like an eternity. Emma froze.
"Okay."
He sat up, rubbing his face before standing. "If that's what you want." He moved past her, opening the closet and pulling out a suitcase. Panic crept in. She had expected anger, accusations, at least a fight. But this calm detachment, it unsettled her. "You're not even going to ask why?" she pressed, crossing her arms. Daniel glanced at her, a tired smile ghosting his lips. "I think I already know." Emma's stomach twisted. By morning, Daniel was gone. The house felt different, emptier, colder. She told herself this was what she wanted, that she was finally free. Mark was the first person she called. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile into her voice. "It's done." Silence. "Mark." "Yeah," he muttered. "That was fast." "You told me to," she reminded him, laughing lightly.
"Right."
"Yeah." His voice lacked the enthusiasm she had expected. "Look, I gotta go. I'll call you later." The line went dead. Emma stared at the screen. Something felt off. Across the city, Mark sat at a bar, his phone face down beside his drink. His fingers tapped against the counter as he considered his next move. He had never actually thought Emma would leave Daniel. Affairs were easy, thrilling when there were stakes.
But now
She was expecting something real. Sophie entered the bar moments later, her eyes scanning the room before landing on him. She smiled, walking toward him with a familiarity that made him shift uncomfortably. "Hey, babe," she greeted, kissing his cheek. "You good?" "Yeah," he muttered, pocketing his phone. Sophie ordered her usual, unaware that her entire world was about to crumble. Meanwhile, Liam sat in his car outside Sophie's apartment, debating whether to go inside. His phone buzzed, a message from Sophie. "Out with Mark. Talk later." Guilt pressed against his chest. Liam had told himself that what he and Sophie had was harmless, a distraction. They had both been lonely, both seeking something their partners failed to provide. But now, as he watched her messages come in, he wondered if he had been a fool to believe it would stay that way. Back at home, Emma scrolled through her chat with Mark, searching for the warmth she had once felt in his words. She typed a message. "Can we talk?" No response. Minutes passed. An hour. She checked his social media. Active 20 minutes ago. A sinking feeling settled in her chest. Had she just made the biggest mistake of her life? Emma's hands trembled as she refreshed her messages again. Nothing. Mark had always been quick to reply before. Now, silence. She told herself he was just busy, but deep down, an uneasy feeling gnawed at her. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Her chest tightened. Had she misread everything? Had she thrown away her marriage for a fantasy? A restless energy took over, and she grabbed her coat, heading for Mark's apartment. She needed to see him, to hear him say this was real. When she arrived, she hesitated before knocking. The door swung open moments later, but instead of Mark's usual smirk, his expression was unreadable. "What are you doing here?" he asked, glancing behind him. Emma frowned. You weren't answering." Mark sighed, stepping outside and closing the door behind him. "Yeah, listen, maybe we should slow down." Her stomach dropped. "Slow down? Mark, I left my husband." "I didn't ask you to do that," he said flatly. His words hit her like a slap. "Are you serious? You were unhappy, right?" He crossed his arms. "That's not on me." Emma's mind raced. She had been so sure of them, so sure Mark wanted this too. But now, standing in front of him, she saw the truth. He had never planned on anything beyond stolen moments. Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." "Unbelievable," she whispered, voice shaking. "Emma, don't make this a big thing," he muttered. She stared at him, searching for any hint of regret. There was none. She turned on her heel, walking away as humiliation burned through her. She had ruined everything. Meanwhile, Sophie scrolled through Mark's messages, her jaw tightening. The late replies, the vague excuses, it all made sense now. Her fingers hovered over her phone before she made a decision. She dialed Emma. Emma was still reeling when the call came through. She hesitated before answering. "We need to talk," Sophie said, her voice sharp. Emma exhaled.
About what?
"About Mark," Sophie replied. "And how we've both been sleeping with him." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Minutes later, they sat across from each other at a cafe, the tension thick. Sophie placed her phone on the table, scrolling through messages. "How long?" Emma swallowed hard. "Almost a year." Sophie nodded, lips pressed into a thin line. "Me? 2 years." Emma felt sick. She had thought she was different, special. But she was just another name on his list. Sophie's voice was cold. "You weren't the only one, by the way." Emma's head snapped up. "What?" Sophie leaned back. "There's others. I checked. He never had any intention of being with you." The weight of it all crushed her. Emma clenched her fists. "I ruined my marriage for nothing." Sophie studied her for a moment. "Guess we both did." Meanwhile, Liam sat across from Daniel at a quiet bar, the weight of his own guilt suffocating him. Daniel took a sip of his drink, his expression unreadable. "I need to tell you something," Liam finally said. Daniel didn't look up. "I already know." Liam froze. "What?" Daniel set his glass down. "Sophie. You." Liam's stomach twisted. "How long?" Daniel exhaled. "Long enough." Liam swallowed hard. "I never meant." Daniel cut him off. "Save it." A beat of silence passed. Liam shifted uncomfortably. "Are we still?"
No.
Daniel's voice was calm, but firm. Liam nodded, accepting the inevitable. Across town, Sophie confronted Mark, her fury barely contained. "You really thought you could keep this up?" she hissed. Mark rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, Soph." She threw her drink in his face. His smirk disappeared. "We're done," she said, voice like steel. For the first time, Mark looked shaken. But Sophie was already walking away. Emma sat alone in her apartment, staring at her reflection in the dark window. Her phone buzzed. Her heart leapt. But it wasn't Daniel. And he wasn't coming back. Daniel woke to the sound of birds outside his new apartment. It was smaller, quieter, but it felt like peace. No tension, no unspoken resentment. Just him. He brewed coffee, scrolling through his phone. A message from an old friend popped up. "Glad to hear you're doing better. Let's catch up soon." He smiled, replying with a simple, "Yeah, let's." For the first time in a long while, he felt light. Emma, on the other hand, felt the opposite. She sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where Daniel's things used to be. The house felt hollow without him. She picked up her phone, fingers hesitating over his name. She typed, "I'm sorry." Deleted it. Typed again. "Can we talk?" Deleted that too. She had called before. Texted. No response. Daniel was gone. Mark's betrayal was one thing. But losing Daniel? That was something else entirely. She had expected him to come back, to at least be angry, to fight for something. but he had simply walked away. And now she was left with the wreckage of her own choices. Across town, Mark sat alone at a bar, stirring his drink. His phone was silent. No messages, no calls. Emma was gone. Sophie was gone. The thrill of the chase had vanished, leaving nothing behind. He smirked at a woman across the bar, but even he could tell it wasn't the same. Sophie had blocked his number.
She had moved on.
Quickly, decisively. Liam hadn't heard from her since. He had lost her. He had lost Daniel. And deep down, he knew he deserved it. He stared at his reflection in the bar mirror, disgusted with the man staring back at him. Emma sat in her car outside Daniel's building. She had told herself she wouldn't do this, but here she was. Minutes passed. Then she saw him. Daniel walked out, laughing, his head tilted toward a woman beside him. Someone new. Someone happy. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to look away. She couldn't. Daniel opened the car door for the woman, his smile effortless. He looked like a man who had moved on. Emma gripped the steering wheel. This was it. The final confirmation. She had thrown it all away. And Daniel? Daniel had never looked back.